Hello. I'm muted.
Hello.
Hey. Hey.
Hey.
Hello.
Hey.
At some point, does the hat come down off the tree and you wear it, Phil? Or
No, hold on.
you have your own? Uh-oh, I've started something here. What have I done?
Mhm.
He's gonna come back with a cat on his head or something. Aha!
I've got a Darth Vader hat.
Nice.
Oh wow. I have a somewhere. I have a Darth Vader. How do you call it? Like one of those Christmas
Oh.
sweaters with Darth Vader in it.
It's beautiful. I have one with the Empire Strikes Back, Luke and Vader fight. Like,
I thought it was being original, but then I was buying it at Primark, which is like by far the most massive, clothes chain in the UK. So yeah, I've seen a few around.
hello. Hey, Georgie.
Hey. Sorry. Wrong room.
Do we want to get started, I guess?
Do we have a facilitator? No,
No. Thanks for
I can
volunteering.
do it. Who is recording?
I
Is
think
anyone
it's
recording?
I think
It's
it's
already recording.
Yeah.
It's free, so we don't have to do anything.
I don't think so. I think
Okay,
Rom
great.
will probably get it.
So there's an item about hoodies. I think Ram put it in possibly, but he's not here. But yeah, I guess it's quite self-explanatory. He's put together this form where like you can register interest for a hoodie and you give them your indicative size and that's it. Apparently the size for now only has to be indicative. You don't have to be precise. At some point we might get like a size chart so that we can actually choose the proper size for each one of us. So yeah, that was it, I guess. Next one is mine. So I was thinking about the next release and what we might want to go in it, because we have at least, like in Europe, we have at least 2 big changes at the moment going on concurrently, which I think we should coordinate, plus potentially any other changes happening on the other side of the pond, and deciding like, I think that we all agree that like the maybe AWS/EKR work is the priority. So I wonder if we should like let that slide in. I think it's well on its way. We're working on CI, plus docs are missing. Plus, of course, CI, we will have to prove that things actually work on AWS. That's why we're setting up AWS CI. So, but if there is no surprises, it might happen soonish. There is this change about merging all the controller images into one and leaving just the API image and controller's image, which is quite, I guess it will conflict with pretty much anything else because it's quite invasive. So what do we do? Do we hold off that merge, get the EKS stuff in, release 0.5 with that? Or do we think we can get both the big changes in for 0.5? Or is there any 3rd, 4th, 5th tracks that need to go in? Because if my preference, I think, would be to just get the AWS stuff in if it's tested and it works, and without the image merge potentially, just get that in, and then image merge can be 0.6. But I don't know what people think. It depends on how far off you are on the different tracks, etc.
I guess the merge it would probably take some more time. So I don't know what's the state of the AWS thing, but if it comes in first, then we can just cut before we merge this other stuff.
It makes
will
me feel a bit safer as well.
definitely- Yeah, we can do that. I mean, it will definitely have conflicts because it's a bit invasive and gross. So I guess we can just cut before we get it in. Might make sense.
Yeah, it does mean that you kind of have to wait before merging, because again, the docs work, for example, needs to be done, etc. Before we can cut the release, we need to document all this AWS stuff. But that might not take too long. And
Documentation will probably not cause any more conflicts, right? Maybe we can just work on the AWS thing and shores until we.
yeah, no, the documentation is not going to cause conflicts, but it has to be in before we can release. And we have to release before you can merge the other thing. So it's kind of indirectly holding off your thing.
I'm wondering if we shouldn't just push what we've got in Helm and Korifi now. So it's taken a while to sort out CI. We've had to do a bit of refactoring, so all the stuff works on both GKE and AW and EKS at the same time. Like all the different ways to create your kube config and log in and everything, and getting the DNS and setting that up. It's looking good now. But yeah, we can manually deploy Korifi on EKS and push stuff and it works.
But so the changes you're mentioning, they are CI changes, they're not code changes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
We
Yeah, so
did
maybe-
a tiny Korifi change today to only create users if you're not using EKS. But yeah, it's all done and stable, I think. So maybe we should just do that to stop it sitting on a branch and causing
And get
problems.
CI, put the CI work in a separate chore, maybe.
Well, no, just carry on with the CI work, but have all we can push safely to main, I think.
Yeah, I mean, track that work with a separate chore and have the actual story. If you think the story is done,
Oh yeah, I suppose so.
we can accept. I can even accept. I mean, accepting is going to be tricky. But as you said, if it can be done manually, then yeah, I could accept. I could and should accept by installing manually.
You could use the Terraform from CF K8s
Yeah, but-
secrets.
But I'm happy to do it manually because that will also inform the docs. Because we need to write docs that can be followed and that work. And the only way to test those is to follow them by hand. So yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And then once that's in, then I guess the other branch can be rebased early. Maybe to start squashing all the conflicts, as many conflicts as you can, I guess, as soon as possible. Okay, yeah, that sounds good. So then once that's in, we work on the docs and then we release. And in the meantime, I guess we'll have to keep the merging work in a branch. That's fine. As long as that branch is, periodically rebased on top of main, then it's going to merge clean. The only danger of a long running branch is when it's not periodically, rebased / merged. But if we keep
guess,
it on top of it,
This branch will be a bit of a fight to merge anyway, like provided that, I mean, the only way that it will not be a fight to merge this branch will be to stop the whirl, which doesn't make much sense. So I think we just have to figure it out. I guess we're going to limit the changes that we merge before it to the AKS thing that's currently ongoing, right? So it's just
yeah, I guess once the KS thing is in, we can start, we can kind of stop the word, as you said, and stop changing other stuff.
And hopefully by that time, we'll have made it work to the side, something that we haven't yet, because there are other problems. So I guess at this point, we'll just have to do the merge.
Yeah, I guess once the EKS stuff is in, I would rebase immediately, just so that if there are any conflicts, any surprises, you notice immediately. Because the more you wait, I think the worse it gets.
Yeah, makes sense.
So are we saying we're gonna do a 1.5 before that gets in?
I would say
Sounds
0.5
like-
just with the Amazon work, yeah.
So the Amazon work.
And
Yeah.
then 0.6 can have the merging of the images, plus, for example, if we finish the labels work, that can go in.
Mhm.
I see there is a bunch of logs, stories appearing on the backlog. If those are done, they can go in. We'll see what we want to get into 0.6. Having a 0.5 that works on Amazon, I think is a good idea.
Okay. Any thoughts on like what's like, I don't even know if it's too early, like any thoughts on like what's left, like how much longer this big change is gonna be? Just thinking.
You mean the merging of the images?
Yeah.
I think we might want to talk about the next topic
Okay.
a little bit though, because it's related.
Okay.
Ah,
Oh.
okay. Let's do it then.
Cool. Well, Julian, do you want to start since you put it up, or?
Yeah. Sorry, I think I had the wrong microphone. Yeah, yesterday morning this came up in the context of like trying to get our closed source pipelines working, because we were giving the same repo tag for both the droplets and the source packages. And that was causing kpack to fail, because apparently when you do a build in the analyze step, it goes to see if there's already been a build at the repo that you give it. So it was pulling up the source droplet and treating it as a build and saying, hey, there's no OS layer in this droplet, and failing. So, I mean, that's an easy fix, right? Just give two different repos, but it did raise this question of like, if we just have one repo that we use and we build onto different SHAs on that same repo, that means that this analyze step is going to be pulling some totally arbitrary prior build of some totally different app
Yeah.
and using it in the analyze step, which feels problematic.
Yeah, and it might actually end up like this would be really hard to do, but it implies there's a way that you can take other apps code and get it into your own.
Yeah, I mean, it's yeah, that's one of the 1,000 problems, right? You push an app and you get a different one. Like,
Yeah, I don't know that that's going to happen. I mean, I would hope that they're doing some kind of like SHA inspection on the inputs before they use the outputs, right? But
they're using an
yeah.
older bit. Like, how do they know? I mean, it's just it would be really weird if they assumed that every image, that every droplet that they push gets pushed to a unique repository, right? Okay, so I mean,
Yeah.
what's the requirement? Is the requirement that there should be a repository per app? Like, would it work? Would it work with a repository per app, like, with the current behavior? That's what I'm asking.
Yes, I think it would. And then it would, I think the part of the reason it does the analyze step is it's wanting to do some reuse of layers that are already pushed.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you used one repository per app, then you'd get theoretically actually some benefits from that, because you could reuse existing stuff. And this is also making me think, I'm wondering if like we're using like fancy registries like right now, like ECR and GAR and everything. I'm wondering if other like registries like Harbor or something might be making internal like assumptions about like how they're storing stuff for a particular repository. And if we push everything to the same one, that might also start to break down. Just because like at the end of the day, you have like a manifest that points to a bunch of blobs that are like layers and stuff. But now we're just going to have a ton of like layers that belong to other apps and stuff. And like if they're doing any kind of pruning or cleanup of old digests, then I wonder if that could also be problematic.
So kpack had a bug that it didn't work on ECR, and now it does. So how do they suggest it works with ECR where you can't do dynamic repository creation?
Well, kpack, you tell it the repository ahead of time, so
So
they
they
probably
expect
assume,
you to create it.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
But then the other problem is there's no common API for creating repositories, so you'd have to have like separate bits of code for which repository you're talking to.
Feels like it's not designed to be used by another program. It's designed to be used by a human. So they expect the human to figure out how to create the repository by themselves and then give it the repository. Like the repository is an input for them. They don't care how it gets created.
Yeah.
They just push that responsibility to upstream, which I think they expect to be just a human using the CRDs instead of another program.
Like AWS does have APIs to create a repository. It's just not the registry API.
Yeah,
like,
no, every will have a different one. Everything will have a different one. So like we have a special case for AWS.
Well, you could have a special case for AWS and hopefully nothing else. That's what we had to end up doing in CF for K8s.
Because the thing is, honestly, all of these behaviors, I think they're contradicting the spec. Like the spec doesn't say anything about the images inside the repository being related, right? The spec doesn't say any of that. The spec says you push a manifest. That's how they call it. The manifest points to other layers inside the repository, which are all identified by SHA, period. Like there's no assumption of correlation. So like if you, as an implementer, prune stuff arbitrarily, you're just not complying to the spec as far as I'm concerned. If you assume that all the images inside a certain repository are all related, you are overextending the guarantees of the spec. The spec doesn't give you that guarantee. So it feels like all these behaviors are like we are relying on the spec.
I think there's a difference between a hard assumption and an optimization, though, right? Like you might choose to compress your repository by looking at deltas between different versions of what's supposedly the same image. And if you feed it our system, it'll still work. It just won't compress.
Yeah, and that's fine, I guess. That's a different conversation. Like, how do we structure this thing so that it's more efficient? Like, it makes it easy for vendors to save space on common layers and stuff.
I think we're doing something abnormal, like strange though, that will like violate a lot of assumptions.
I mean, our first idea when we looked at this was the one of having per app things. It's the most natural because then every repository has a sequence, has a history of it. Each image is one step in the history of one conceptual thing, right? And that's how most container registries work, right? You pull the Ubuntu, the Docker Hub / Ubuntu, and you get the different versions of Ubuntu in time, but they're all Ubuntu, right? So that's what we had in mind at the beginning. The thing is just we have this technical limitation in AWS.
Yeah, I almost think like the special case like for AWS of creating the repo is the lesser evil versus reusing the same repo for every app. I think like especially even as we if and when we think about deleting and cleaning up stuff, like I have this vague recollection that the APIs around deletion aren't very kind about trying to delete by a digest either.
Yeah, it will be very hard anyway. Like if you've pushed an app 200 times, you've created 200 images in that repository.
It takes
how do you tell which ones belong to which app?
Yeah, our cleanup in K8s takes over 45 minutes every day to delete what was created during the day. And that's async in the background, just queuing all the jobs to happen.
But that deletes just the whole repository, no?
No, it can't, because we don't know what the repositories are, because they're created dynamically. So we have to go through and list them all and delete them. We have a repository for each image, don't we?
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying though is like if in a production context, when we implement like deletion, like if you delete an app, you would assume its stuff would be deleted. How would that work if they're all sharing one repo?
Yeah, we would have to kind of keep track. Honestly, like, so the
droplets have the SHA stored on them, so you can delete the corresponding things.
So can you delete by, like, if you delete the tag, then does it delete the right stuff? Like this?
No.
So in
tags are mutable. You can't delete a tag.
Yeah, we delete. Yeah, we delete the. We do it SHA by SHA, I think.
I guess. I just think there's like. There's this kpack, like probably a security issue right now, and there's like a number of performance issues. Like it almost like I'm really thinking that like if we special cased AWS to create the repo, like that might be it, and then like the others would be fine with the current like creating the repo strategy.
I don't know if there are other registry providers that won't create stuff.
Yeah, but like I feel like we could deal with that when the time comes, like using, like if you abstract the code such that it has like like we already have like the registry repository or whatever. Like you have an AWS one, and then like if others have registries they want to support, like that's something that could be contributed. But it's might be unlikely that people actually have ones that aren't in the set we know about.
Yeah, I guess we could do a thing where like we just check the URL, and if the domain is an AWS one, we treat it as AWS. We could spike something and see how it looks like.
Yeah,
I guess I'd suggest making it an explicit setting, because somebody might make a DNS alias for
oh yeah.
for their AWS, and we don't want to like not do the right thing.
So when you install, you say, this is an AWS thing, please create repositories for me.
Yeah, we could just have a default provider and AWS provider or something like that.
Yeah, to be honest, we had to do that in CF for VMs. Like we call it the fog provider. That's pretty leaky. But anyway, it was functioned as an IaaS like designator, because we had to do special casing for different blob stores and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they all claim to adopt the S3 APIs.
Another thing that is coming to my mind, because I remember we thought about this in the past, is that if we want to basically make the way we construct these image references a bit more clever, then we have the problem that the workload needs to be given the path as an input. Because at the moment, I think what happens is that the builder just appends a GUID, and then we change that so that it doesn't append anything, right? So that doesn't need any change to the workload spec. But like if you want to pass it the app name, which would be the natural thing here, if we want to have per app repositories, then the app workload needs to be given the path where to push the image. And that's I don't know how big of a change, honestly. Maybe not that big. It's a matter of adding a field and passing it.
It's an additive change, so it shouldn't be.
Basically, we want to move the computation of what the path you push to of the tag, call it whatever you want, outside of the builder, because the builder could do it when it was a matter of adding up GUID, and it can do it now when it's a matter of just using it verbatim. But if it needs to be more clever and use information that it doesn't have because it's all, belongs to higher level abstractions, it needs to be given the thing, which I think is pretty natural. You create a build workload, you tell it, please push here. But yeah, that's extra work. Okay, which I guess we can spike together with the rest. So I can create a spike, and from tomorrow you can have a pair just playing with this and see how far it gets. Because yeah, I agree that having it per app is just ideal. It's just the natural way. But we should. I want to see how it looks like to have all the special casing and stuff, because if it might be very ugly.
On a vaguely related thing, I know somebody at one point said clients might be looking for immutable tags in their repositories for a security thing. We tried turning it on AWS because you can for ECR. And of course, kpack doesn't work on its image builder because it pushes the latest tag.
Yeah.
So just pointing that one out.
So immutable tags are not an option. But yeah, it's
not only for the builder, it's okay for the droplets. And our packages are fine too.
Is there a way to keep kpack from pushing that latest tag? I mean, I suspect that might be the reason that like we're getting this strange behavior, right?
No,
this is a cluster builder image thing.
Yeah, I think it does the analyze step regardless, like of what.
And it's just gonna, if there's no latest tag, it's just gonna grab whatever. I guess I wonder, like, if there's no latest tag, how would it know what to get?
But yeah, but for the builder, so the builder is that image that it builds based on all the build packs.
Right.
It's nothing to do with the droplets or the sources. So I guess the builder is just special. It doesn't go through the build. the builder is not built with a build pack. The builder is the thing that the build packs use to build stuff with the build packs. It's a mess. So I guess it behaves differently than for droplets.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the
You're
builder
not
image that
talking
has
about
the latest tag.
the actual
Droplet.
droplet having a latest tag. You're talking about the builder image itself having.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So disregard
I guess it
everything.
could be easily changed. I don't know if they need, because then when they pull it, I guess they look for it.
I assume
Mm.
that's what they're looking for when they go to use it. Is they're looking
The
for
thing
the
is,
latest.
this latest tag is nothing special, right? It's just a tag. Like if there's no tag, you don't know what to pull, basically.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know how Analyze is figuring out which image to pull down.
But also having an immutable latest tag is a contradiction. Like the whole point of latest is that it's mutable and always points to latest, right?
Right.
It stops being latest at the next push if it's immutable.
Mhm.
So if they rely on they're relying on a mutable tag behavior. So it won't work by definition.
But it doesn't seem to. Well, that's true. Kiro, did we try and push a second app, or did we only ever push one app?
But it can
We only pushed one,
it's
didn't we?
it doesn't depend on the number of apps, right? It pushes the builder when it starts.
Oh, the builder, yes, the builder we had to change to make that that registry mutable, but
Yeah,
we didn't push a second app to know if it was doing the same thing to the droplet image.
Yeah.
We don't know.
I think for droplets, it gets built, you get back the full image ref and then you use
do,
it.
but that doesn't mean that they don't put a latest tag on it.
Fair
So we're
enough.
just not using. We don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I don't know what it, because like I think how operators are going to run their registries is going to be very dependent as well. And like I know like Harbor, for example, has a garbage collection that burns images that don't have tags or anything associated with them. So like
That is a problem.
yeah, and I know others do that too. Because like at the end of the day, you're operating this thing and you have like terabytes of storage, and you're gonna want to clean up and compact stuff. And I don't know how that works for every registry, but I know some will like start deleting things that they think are unused or like older versions of the same repo.
I mean, does that mean
Chef for VMs does something similar with droplets and it keeps like 5 or something.
Yeah.
So we could look at doing the same and just tag the latest 5 or something and let the rest be in garbage collected.
I mean, I think we should like clean up our own stuff regardless, but I don't think that's necessarily the solution for the, like, we shouldn't do that to protect the, like, re-implement the registry's own garbage collection, I feel like.
Yeah, no, if you delete an app, then stuff that belongs to the app, I think it's fair to expect those things to go.
Yeah,
for long running apps, then there might be apps that have been running for so long that they have like hundreds of droplets, and someone will have to like clean up those.
Yeah, we
In
should
that
do.
case, you have to keep, I don't know, 3, 4, 5.
Like we should clean up our app resources, but I'm talking about if we share a repo, you might have an app that you pushed 2 years ago and you're perfectly happy with it and it's running fine, but the registry is going to think that's like just like old
and
cruft.
just clean it. Yeah. No, having a single repository, of course, makes it much harder to clean.
And like, I don't even know if we can necessarily like I think people are going to like just run these things, or they're going to run automatically, and it's going to mess up their apps. Even if you documented like don't have any garbage collection on your registry, like I have no idea how like the IaaS ones implement this stuff, or if they even give those.
We could come up with our own garbage collection strategy, right? Which works with one big repository. It's not necessarily going to match the strategy used by all the different vendors and operators, and that could be surprising.
And I guess also what I'm saying is what the vendors do could be unavoidable.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
So like I think we should like seriously consider the like going back to what we had with the, or at least having one repo per app. That seems like the best thing, even if it makes the AWS case messier.
Yeah, I would say if we have to touch that again, I wouldn't go back to, because that's just messy. Like, I will go to. I would do it per app. At that.
Yeah, I think per app makes perfect sense. And then that's honestly like with what we used to have, you wouldn't get any of the performance benefits because you're pushing a new one for every push. But per app, then theoretically, you'd be like able to reuse.
Yeah, that's
stuff.
also impossible
Yeah.
to garbage collect. How do you tell which repositories are good and which one are bad? You
Mhm.
lose you in the opposite way, but you also lose the temporal correlation between the different versions, right? You don't know if if one is the old version of another one, or if they're two completely different ones. There's no way to tell. The only way is to constrain them into app per app things, and then the latest is latest, and the other ones are older versions of the same thing. So yeah, I'm gonna create a spike, and we can start working on it as soon as we can. Yeah.
What is what?
see this
If
coming.
even if we do it this way, I guess if you push an app and just let it run for 2 years, some cloud provider garbage collection could still break it.
I don't
if it's not
think
being
I
pulled.
think that's less likely. I think it's because you can see it was pulled. You can always keep like the latest SHAs of the thing. I think what's most likely is if you're only having one image repo and you're pushing hundreds of things to it.
I see what you mean. Yeah, and then
Yeah, the tail end of
latest
those SHAs are
gets-
going to get pruned.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, okay. I just one more thing would be: are we going to block the release on this? Because if yes, I guess maybe it makes sense to park the merger of the Helm charts or something like that, because it might, might take a lot more time to get there.
Yeah, if we believe that the current solution won't work, then yeah, we should definitely block the release on this, because otherwise.
Yeah, I think we should, because after what we saw yesterday, with like the errors we were seeing where it was like reusing and like complaining about stuff, that was kind of scary to us.
Yeah, we're lucky to catch it. I guess we never test with like long running apps. Maybe we should think about something like that. I mean, I guess our eggs, the retro board, those kind of apps, they are long running, but we don't really push them at all. They're long running, but we don't push them regularly.
Mm-hmm.
So this behavior happens where like you're pushing the same app, the nth time, and you realize, oh, I pushed the change and it's actually not there because kpack thinks it can use the previous version or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, we don't actually know that there's a bug in behavior. We found it because we tried to use the packages and droplets repos as the same repo.
Yeah, that could also be a bug.
But
still, there seems to be more than one reason.
I think there's a bug, like
mm,
I think it'd be hard to prove it, but people like on CF for VMs, people figured out all kinds of things to exploit like the build pack caches and stuff. Like if kpack is pulling an image and analyzing it and it pulls the one for the wrong app, like I have a feeling something subtle and wrong is going to happen.
If you have a cache and you want to reuse something that you have in the cache, you can only reuse it if it's the same identical thing to the one that you would have computed, right? That's the whole point of caching, is like, okay, this computation is already being done.
Yeah,
but it's not about returning the wrong results. It's never about if you're returning the wrong results, it has to be a bug, Like if you're saying these sources would compile to this thing that I've already compiled, so I'm just going to reuse this layer, fine. But if you're using a completely different layer, then no, then that's never acceptable, right?
So yeah, let's create a spike for this. I guess we'll need to block the release, which might actually, well, let's talk about this again tomorrow on stand-up, but maybe we can just do the merger then. I think we'll have probably enough time to make sure it's fine. Yeah, I guess we don't have to decide now. We just need to block the release on this other problem because it's more serious. I'll have to leave now though. Sorry about that. So I'll see some of you tomorrow.
Good night.
Bye.
Yeah.
Do we think we have exhausted this topic?
Yeah. I think we know what to.
I mean, is it worth talking to kpack about what the analyze step is doing? Or I just want to avoid.
I think we should talk to kpack probably about like get their perspective. Like I think they also have a lot of image repository knowledge and stuff too. But
Right.
like this doc describes what it's doing. It's basically trying to reuse layers if it can. I don't know.
It's a bit optimistic about, but this is not kpack though. So the analyze comes from the lifecycle, and they use the lifecycle from the buildpacks project.
yes.
So I guess from that point of view, it might not be kpack at all. It might be.
It's the build, and then build packs. I think in practice they all use the same life cycle, but it's they have freedom to do other things in the analyze step if they want, based on the image. But I don't think there's enough build pack vendors for that to matter too much.
Yeah, I think this one is the de facto only one.
Yeah.
I guess the key thing is that it says it's analyzing information from the previously built image, so that's why it's pulling the image down to see what it can do. Yeah. Okay.
But I have a feeling that this is like case one of many assumptions that will start to violate about how people are using these things. But anyways, Spike sounds good. I don't know if there's much more to talk about it.
Okay. The next thing I have there is about kpack again, but it's a different thing. So I'll try to be brief. So basically kpack 081 broke us because they would require the builder to be created only after the store and the stack were already existing. And this is because they've reintroduced this, they've reintroduced some code which throws these permanent errors in case failures like the store couldn't be found or the stack couldn't be found occur. Right. And we looked at this and we raised it with them, and basically what I found out is that the reason the reason they return these permanent errors everywhere is that the way they manage dependencies between CRDs is with with their own like tracking code. So they have this concept of a tracker inside kpack that can be set up to tell it, okay, this resource depends on these other resources, and make sure to reconcile resource A when B and C or C change, etc. And currently that tracking code doesn't work for resources that don't exist yet. So they've agreed to release 082, which basically reverts the only commit which made release 081, which means 082 is factually equivalent to 080. And then the plan is to fix it properly, which means reintroduce that commit once again, plus a fix to the tracking code. So yeah, if you're wondering what the hell is going on with kpack, this is what's going on. They've asked for a pull request, but just by looking at the code, I don't think it's an easy fix. I'm asking questions, and I hope that if I get satisfactory answers, I might manage to come up with a PR, and hopefully it's not a massive one. Otherwise, I'll just ask them to figure it out. But their plan is to have this proper fix in 09. Just we'll have to keep our eyes peeled for this stuff. So every time we get a new version of kpack, we need to make sure we test it and see if it still behaves like we need to. I wonder why then. I mean, I don't know why, but like I think this is all a problem with just not using controller runtime, which seems to have all this functionality built in. Apparently the framework they're using doesn't, so they had to come up with this. They have their own like queue of like tree. They have their own tree of dependencies, and then they use the informers to trigger this code that looks at the tree, and it's like, oh, this is changed. Let's see which things are. It's basically the, how's it called? Informer pattern? No. Observer, right? It's basically an observer. It has a list of which things need to be notified about changes in other things, and it does it. But like in our, we have similar needs in our repository, in our controllers, but we can just say dot watches or something, and it just does it automatically. So I wish they could do the same, but they can't.
Yeah, I wonder if kpack just predates controller runtime.
Does it? It could be. I don't know. They're using the Knative stuff. Does it mean Knative also needs to do all of this? Because it's a pretty common thing to do. Like every time you reconcile a resource to another resource, you want to reconcile both ways, right? So you want, when A changes, you want to reconcile into B, but when B changes, you want to put it back to where A is, right? If you delete a pod, it gets recreated. If you scale it up and manually it gets scaled back down, stuff like that. So every controller in Kubernetes needs to do some version of this, which is why controller runtime supports it so well.
Yeah, looking at the Git repos, controller runtime was 4/5 years ago, and kpack was 4 years ago. So it's
maybe it was a
probably,
bit
like,
young at the
yeah,
time. It was a bit
less
yeah.
ubiquitous.
I wish they just port it. It's probably, it might be expensive now, but like it's gonna save them so many issues. Anyway, I guess I'll keep you posted. If I can make the PR, I'll be happy to, because also I'd like to understand a bit more about their code base. Otherwise, we just wait for them to fix it. In the meanwhile, 082 does the trick. It does it via an error and extra reconciliation loop, like we're used to, instead of using this fancy tracking thing, but it works nonetheless. So.
It reminds me of an error I saw the other day with kpack, where a registry had a quota and its builder would build an image that was over the quota, but all the intermediate layers just hung around on the registry, and their garbage collection thing only ran once a week, and it just ended up crashing the registry. So I wonder if they're also, I know they got that feedback. I wonder if they're going to incorporate that into some of their retry stuff as well. Some better backoff.
They treat any error coming from a registry differently. If you look at the code in 081, there's literally like an if that says if the error is a network error, and by network, and if you look at where they raise these network errors, is any communication with the registries results in a network error when it fails.
Does it retry, I assume?
The network errors are the only ones that get retried.
Okay.
So
yeah,
the logic is if it's not a network error, and maybe that's why they don't want to retry. I can see how like retries can get out of hand, but like I was thinking that, exponential backoff should be good enough for everyone. And maybe in some cases you don't want to. That's when you raise the permanent. But they went the other way around. They always raise permanent unless there's nothing they can do about it. And then everything else it's handled by this parallel tracking, dependency tracking mechanism, which only retriggers things when things happen to your dependencies. Right? It's more efficient, I guess, but it's a lot of code. And there's lots of ways you can get it wrong, etc. Okay, I was facilitating this. If there's nothing else, I will set you all free.
All right, see you.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, so bye.
Bye.